This is Christopher Moonlight at the San Diego Comic-Con 2012, and it's a very big convention. We're up on the rooftop. It's kind of an overcast day, and there's a lot of great stuff going on. A lot of comic books, and a lot of Hollywood. Matter of fact, in the last 10 years, Hollywood has become a huge part of the San Diego Comic-Con, and some people are happy about it. Some people not so much. So what we're going to do this time around is we're going to weigh the pros and cons of Hollywood at the San Diego Comic Book Convention. So let's see if we can talk to some people.
It's brought a lot more attention from mainstream to this show, which is great.
I believe that it has opened the door to a whole new audience. People who go to movies but don't read comics. You know, now they know where the ideals come from.
Hollywood is sort of put it like Sean. It's like a big beacon down on comics and taken the content and really exploded it. And I think it's a good thing.
Once the pop culture horizon opened up, more of the general public came here. And after they've seen the celebrities or played the games, they go looking around the exhibit hall, and then they see comics that they never knew existed.
I think you can't walk 10 feet in any direction and not see comics.
I guess, you have to have growth, and the way this is kind of, turned into a very large event, it does have its benefits.
When the mainstream embraces, a subculture or what might be perceived as a niche market, a lot of other people then discover your own craft and your own industry and so on, and more people are brought to it than were already there.
San Diego Comic-Con International. It's one of the biggest pop culture events in the world, attracting hundreds of thousands of people from all over the globe to share in their enthusiasm for all things media, from film, TV, games, and of course, comic books. But it wasn't always so. For most of its 45-year life, the convention operated in near obscurity as an annual place of convergence for comic book fans, artists, and retailers who simply wanted to spend some time with like-minded people, to share their enthusiasm for the medium and talk shop, away from the judgment of a world that only saw comics as child's fare or entertainment for illiterates and social outcasts. However, 20 years ago, things started to change. The next generation of filmmakers were beginning their ascension into the public eye, and they brought with them their love of superheroes and anti-heroes. More and more producers and studio executives were learning that the world of comic books was brimming with untapped intellectual properties that they could adapt for the screen and put their advertising department to the task of promoting. Suddenly the world at large was aware of artists, creators, and characters in a whole new light, and the comic book community at large found themselves in the middle of something that they never expected. They were a hit?
Oh my gosh, it's so different. You would not recognize it from what it was like 14 years ago. There was actually no media in here. It was strictly comics. And I remember preview night being the very first time it was a professionals night. And they had a special setup for just pros to buy those exclusive covers. You know when they used to do like 5 variants of one cover? My dad and I snuck in and we bought some covers, and then the next year I think they started doing preview night, and it really was just to show, not to sell, like the new things. It was really different. It's changed a lot.
It wasn't nearly as nuts as it is these days.
Is it Granddad's old Comic-Con? No. When I started doing it, it was maybe a quarter of the hall of what it is now. And then I want to say 7 years ago, it became a multimedia show. They opened it up to gaming and licensing, and the comic movies really weren't at the forefront yet to where they're the focus. But it was also the cable networks jumped in, the movie people jumped in. Their 18 to 35 audiences here. The social media world changed it because of the Twittering and YouTube and Facebook, because of how much of that is going on here. That it was a combination of a lot of things that really turned this into the 800-pound gorilla.
I remember walking the aisles, and guys would be like leaning literally out of their booths, like, is that a girl? Oh my, is that a chick? And one guy was like, how did you even hear about this? Like, how do you know? I'm like, well, there's this thing, it's called the internet. I'm aware.
Yeah, I'm old enough to remember when it was a rarity when the real world would ever pay attention to a comics convention. The best they could do was, look how much this old comic book is worth. And that was it. Now people actually come because it's very exciting. The stuff that we've known for years, like how cool the stories are and how compelling the characters are, the whole world is beginning to discover it.
RC's been here for 13 years. I've been here with him for almost 7 to 8 years, and it's amazing to see the little guys as fans. Now they're becoming a little bit older, and you see them. Wow, man, you grew a lot in the last 5 years, and it's that fan base. You know, you see them grow, and every year we have something new. So it's pretty awesome.
It just means we're getting old, and we better get going.
Now I remember, I don't know if you remember this, but one year Leonardo DiCaprio landed on the roof in a helicopter.
Sure.
And in my mind, and I could be wrong about this, but it almost seems like that was the trigger. Like maybe the Hollywood guys said, why is our big star going to this thing? I remember that was kind of like the word going around.
I think when it started to get a little bit of coverage, a lot of cable coverage, on certain stations, as it turned into Sundance. It became almost like a clicky thing to be into. And then Hollywood, of course, is going to jump on to wherever they think they can attack that audience, that 18 to 35 audience, that core group where the money's at. And their marketing people told me, you want a young audience, you got to go to Comic-Con.
The other hand is, at a convention like this, there's a lot more people here, but a lot more of them are maybe here to see, panels or get exclusives or, this kind of thing, than it was probably in the earlier stages of the convention.
And that has been the trade-off for the conventions and the comic book business at large. Hollywood is arguably the biggest, most influential media force in the world, and while the people of the comic book industry were happy to reap the benefits of their newfound recognition, they also had to cope with a new state of flux that often caused them to have to compromise the territory that was once exclusively their own. How has Hollywood changed this convention and changed comics? What have you seen? Positive, negative, a bit of both?
It's hard to say. Through the years, when Comic-Con was a complete, comic book convention, I have to say, there's times, it has branched into, something a little bit of it's kind of metamorphosed into a different type of convention. There are things I like about present time, but there's a lot of stuff I miss about the old days.
Hollywood came in realizing that they had a captive audience here that they could market to for their big summer blockbuster movies. So they started buying booths and bringing in props from those movies. So in the last couple of years, you would have seen a Batmobile or a horse or Odin's throne, things like that, large-scale props and costumes and creatures and things like that. And it's been a mixed blessing because it's brought a lot more attention from mainstream to this show, which is great, but it has made things a little bit more difficult for attendees because now a lot of Hollywood and gaming industry folks will now not only take up the square footage in the hall, but also the hotel rooms and rent out places that normally you would have a party at, and now I can't throw the party at this place because these people have rented it. So it's kind of a mixed thing. I wouldn't say that it's a bad thing. I wouldn't say it's a good thing. It's like life itself. It's both.
You have to have growth, and the way this is kind of turned into a very large event, it does have its benefits with bringing Hollywood in. you know, we don't get out of the booth as much as we could to kind of schmooze a little bit, but it is nice to see the diversity of different people that are coming into the conventions. Some people into comic books, some people that are just now getting introduced to them, or in the movies. So, you know, it's kind of it's a rough thing. I mean, do I miss it as a comic convention? Yes, I do, but things have to change. So it's kind of inevitable that it would, you know, it's growing into something, you know, and look to see what it's going to turn into in another 10 years.
Inevitably, you're going to always have a rub when you have this many people and this much going on. And there's going to always be a counterculture element that's going to say, look, it's our nature as artists to think that, you know, the bigger establishment is trying to push us to the side. But I don't agree with the fact that, you know, we hear about how there's less and less comics here, because I think you can't walk 10 feet in any direction and not see comics. Now, is it the forefront? It's in the name, but no, I agree with the argument that, yeah, I wish there was more comics, but yet I think there's a lot of comics here, and I don't think it gets enough credit that there are as many comics here.
If a comic convention only catered to comic fans, that's the only type of reader you're going to get. Someone who has seen your book in the comic store already, if that store carried you, and has rejected you. Or on the upside, if they're a fan of yours, they already have your books.
Yeah.
So it's always great to meet them, but the name of the game is always to keep building the readership.
Now, the bigger argument, I think, for people within the industry is Artist Alley is smaller than a lot of shows. Like the New York Comic Con, Artist Alley is enormous. C2E2 in Chicago. Shows I do overseas, Artist Alley is, you know, a pavilion in itself. Are they pushed to the side? Yeah, I think somewhat, but, you know, that would be my biggest, you know, slant against it. But there's also, you know, a great deal of positives here, that if this show isn't your cup of tea, there are so many smaller shows now. Ape is an independent show that Comic-Con, you know, sponsors. Mocha in New York.
Emerald City and New York Comic Con certainly are bringing in the general public.
Yeah.
When they used to just be niche.
Artist Alley was originally one of the Comic-Con's premier features. Mainly, it was a low-traffic area. An attendee could find row after row of artist tables manned by illustrators displaying their original artwork from published stories and drawing all day long, in the middle of the convention room floor. Time could be spent leisurely looking through this work and chatting up the people who created it. Now it's a much smaller, but more high-traffic area, which has been pushed to the end of the hall in favor of behemoth displays from movie studios and cable channels promoting their upcoming films and TV shows for the fall season. I spent some time looking around, talking to the artists there, and at one point during a break, these were my thoughts.
The biggest surprise for me so far is Artist Alley, because it's not as desolate looking as it used to be. I think people said that it's smaller, but it's definitely seems to be thriving more. The sponsorship from DeviantArt, the influx of people that Hollywood has brought to the convention, or it seems like the Artist Alley people are busy all day long. So for them, it seemed very positive. I have to wonder how many Artist Alley people are wishing that they could get in and weren't able to. But the ones that were there seem pretty happy. So I don't know. We'll see what else we'll find out. Overall, there's very much like I expected. A lot of people have very positive things to say, and some people have some negative things to say, but none of the people are exclusive to those two things. So
we are veterans of the business. We've been doing Artist Alley almost 20 years now, and it certainly has changed since we started. It used to be a lot larger and less populated. The square footage was more, so there's more tables, more people.
The silver screen, whether it be, you know, Mike Mignola, Hellboy, you know, Kevin Eastman with the Turtles, all these industry giants that have become very successful in Hollywood had their meager beginnings in Artist Alley. And for a very important reason, because at the core of it, drawing is the mother of all art, and Artist Alley is an outlet that was open so that they could come here, draw, illustrate, shake hands, meet people. So it's really very, very important to the industry, and as far as I'm concerned, it's the catalyst of where all the great ideas have been spawned and come from. Artist Alley is at the core of Comic-Con. Film producers are walking around and they're looking for those unique ideas.
Anybody from Hollywood looked at your stuff and today, would you like to make that into a movie?
We've had a couple people speak with us years back. I definitely would like to get the deepest art, put into some sort of, moving forward with like either animation or a movie. I think it's a really strong property over all the other things I've done. Some of the other ones are a little bit more esoteric and probably weren't commercially successful with that. But I think with Deepest Dark, that would be probably one of the titles that I would really like to push into a movie or some sort of animated movie.
Over the years, we've been approached by Hollywood people often. We had a series that we used to do back in the day called Heartbreakers, which is, as far as I know, the first female action hero comic, as opposed to a costume superheroine character. And that almost got made into a Hollywood film several times, but each time it was about ready to be greenlit and go into production, a film would come out featuring a female action hero that would tank. So it would Eon Flux, Ultraviolet, Barbed Wire. These films actually prevented our Heartbreakers film from getting made. So we did the little Hollywood roller coaster.
The more I learned about how movies are made, especially genre movies, which Supernatural would be, my characters are not larger than life. They're smaller than life, so their cases tend to be more low-key, and the characters are more lighthearted. A movie's got to be. And this is why superheroes are perfect for movies, because a movie's got to save the world. It's got to be bigger than anything. And if you've noticed, like the Men in Black movies, the first movie they saved the world. The sequel they had to save the universe. The third movie I think they had to save 1969. So it just gets bigger and bigger. And it's tough to tell small stories, which my characters, I mean, the name of the book is The Monsters Meet on Court Street. They're not meeting in Transylvania. They're meeting on Court Street.
But then a few years ago, we came out with a book called Boilerplate. This Victorian robot having adventures in the 19th century. And that got a lot of attention. And people would come up, Hollywood types, producers and whatnot, would come up to the table and say things like, is this a property? And I would do everything I could to not be snarky and say, no, it's a graphic novel, it's a comic book, it's a picture book, whatever we were doing at the time. But Hollywood has been good to us because we were able to send a copy of Boilerplate to J.J. Abrams, who loved it and is now going to make a movie of it. So we have nothing bad to say about Hollywood. In fact, if you were to interview everybody in this hall who is a creator, I would have to guess that 90% of them would tell you that they would love to have their character made into a movie, and they would be eager to make whatever compromises to make that happen. I mean, for people in this business, that's like winning the lottery.
For the last 10 years, Dominic and I have been featured in Heavy Metal Magazine, and it was through short stories. Our character is called Colt the Outlander. He's a bounty hunter. And through those short stories, even though they're 7 to 12-page stories, over the years, we've been featured in that magazine. There's been a build-up of a loyal fan base and people coming back for the original sketches and the paintings and the characters. And now we're at the point where we're writing a script, we're doing storyboards, we've got the graphic novel, we're trying to put it all together to the end product would be a movie and a video game deal.
Or a TV series.
Or TV series.
Yeah. I do wish that Hollywood would give some creator control, leave some creator control, because, like, for example, I think the best comic book movies were Sin City, and I really liked Kick-Ass. I thought that was a really great movie, and it was, the creators were really involved with that, so I think that Hollywood could actually just take a graphic novel and use it like panel for panel and have an amazing, movie.
I think Sin City is a really good example because you have the actors acting it and taking advantage of what happens when you put a physical presence on the screen and just the charisma that can come through just from the body language and the actors themselves and the life they can bring to it. But then because he also did that, with green screen, he was really able to take advantage of letting the environment also be a character in the story in the same way that you're doing it when you're doing comics, and that you have so much sort of control about. He really did capture it so well in terms of the film to the comic, because I had the same feelings about each part of the story in the film that I did in the comic. In the comic, like the Marv character was my favorite. That was my favorite story, my favorite character. I felt the same way about it in the film. I felt like that had, for me, I connected most with that character and that story, and it had the most energy for me, and the way that character talked and everything had a really wonderful, likable vibe.
What about, do you ever have a comic that you love and then see them do some version of it in Hollywood and then go, everybody would think that was so cool if Hollywood didn't?
Honestly, I think they really screwed over Emma Frost in First Class. She's a character who I genuinely like, and just her portrayal was god-awful. I did not like that at all. That made me really... I didn't like her costumes at all. None of them were particularly memorable or cute.
Obviously, there have been times where the influence of comic books has been felt in modern filmmaking, but there have also been a lot of missed opportunities. Fan backlashes have been felt after many superhero movies failed to capture the flavor of their characters and themes, in favor of what may have been thought of by the studios as a safer bet. Institutions such as Wonder Woman are made more tame and less comic book-like, leaving many scratching their heads and wondering why.
I think a lot of what seems to be driving a lot of the costume changes now is a marketing idea that Marvel's started, and I think DC's following suit, that they're designing these characters to look more how they want the movie to be. They're designing them much more of how these characters are going to be seen in the films. So I think the new Wonder Woman outfit is just strictly market-driven by a film that's probably in the pipeline a few years down the line. I'm not crazy about it. I think it looks, like an aerobics instructor.
Pants? Black pants? Come on.
Gotta have stars and stripes forever. Come on.
Well, I love Wonder Woman a lot. She's a hardcore feminist, and she was one of my role models as a kid. And I really love her, and her whole story is awesome. She lived on that lesbian island, and she's all beautiful and tough, and she's not anorexic, and she's got the black hair, she's hot, amazing. But I don't know about the pants though, because it makes sense she's wearing pants because it's kind of her thing. She's a pants wearing type. I don't wear pants personally. But at the same time, I believe in femininity through feminism. So if you've got beautiful glittery panties on the whole time, that's kind of awesome. It's feminism through femininity. And so I don't know, but then again, I could see after wearing panties for a really long time, you'd want to switch it up after, whatever, it's been 50 years, and maybe wear pants every once in a while too.
We don't have a lot of respect for older things. Old buildings get torn down when they're super beautiful, and then they put up boring new buildings. I think that you could say the exact same thing for her costume. Oh, it's dated, it's old. But they're going to regret it eventually. Because what they did is replace a cool old building with a really generic, boring new building.
It won't last. She's had new costumes before, and she went right back to the original.
So, for all the turbulence that comics have endured, one thing that remains a constant is that not only does the loyal fan base remain, but that the audience for their subject matter continues to grow to ever-dizzying heights. Not only in San Diego, but conventions everywhere are bigger than ever, and the box office for the content they create have broken all records to date.
If you told me as recently as 10 years ago that the billion-dollar worldwide hit of the summer would be an Avengers movie, and that was a Marvel comic I never even liked, but the fact that struck a nerve with the general public. People who don't read comics, says something about our medium and the wonderful stories and characters that we all appreciated for years.
I like the idea that if there's a lot of new people here and they've never heard of Iron Man, they've never heard of, you know, the Lone Ranger or half of the Top Cow characters or Aspen characters, that, you know, hopefully we're introducing them, you know, to a new influx of viewers and comic book readers, because I'm not worried about Comic-Con, I'm worried about comics. I mean, I'm worried about comics 10 years from now. Who's going to read comics? When I do shows overseas, I see a lot of kids predominantly at shows. I see school buses pulling up on Sunday where they have kids there.
Hey, that's really cool.
I'd like to see more of that at American shows. And to the credit, I've seen it at the New York show, where they have kids free day on Sundays and things like that. Because, you know, comics are fine now, but I'm just worried about 10 years from now. You know, with the digital, with the iPads, and the ever, you know, evolving what's happening to the print media. Print is, you know, I don't want to be the death rattle, but the last 3 printers that I've used have gone under. You know, they're just not, the internet changed it. There's no one prints catalogs, and then now everyone's going towards iPads, and I don't know if our kids are going to read anything on paper. I think a lot of it too has to do with the economy. I think it's you know, comic books are kind of like it's the fast food mentality of, it's always been the grassroots working man's type of medium. And I think the economy, when it took a hit, comics took a hit, but I see them bouncing back. I see people still spending money on comics. You know, the Avengers grossed $1 billion and all that, and that's nice, but inevitably I think that audience, so that tells me that that audience is out there that likes the subject matter. So I think, but I'm also going to be critical of comics of the last 10 years. There's been a lot of regurgitating storylines and a lot of stuff that I think we can do a better job with. Yeah. Really, I think there's a lot of room for improvement with comic books.
Oh yeah, just, you know, when I'm doing, I was doing kabuki as a comic, you know, just really, you have a story to tell and you're really trying to think of like what's the most powerful way to tell that story, and so I'm doing it in the medium of a comic book, and I'm really trying to think of, you know, what are the assets available, you know, in your arsenal as a storyteller in comics. So, you know, I was always looking at it that way. You know, there's things you learn from film as well that you can apply in comics. You know, with film and comics, there is a certain amount of overlap because they're both visual stories, and there's things that you can apply to each one. But there's also a lot of differences which are easy to forget because of all the similarities, if that makes any sense.
What's one example?
Well, with comics, for instance, unlike film, anytime someone speaks, it takes up visual space. You know, inside film, you can be seeing whatever you're seeing, and there can be as much sound effects or voiceover or dialogue, and it's not obscuring the image. But in comics, it's using the same real estate, so you have to think of very clever ways to integrate the text to image ratio and parse it out in a certain way and make it have a rhythm to it and take advantage of it and not be encumbered by it, which is something I love about comics. I love that idea of it being a synthesis of type and image, and you know, if you sort of do it right, you can't tell where the story ends and the image begins, and the image tells the story and the type is part of the artwork. But then once the story was complete, I did have some interest in film to adapt, and TV to adapt kabuki from early on, and so then I was really intrigued by that, because then it was a really interesting challenge to see an entirely new set of aesthetics and mediums that I could tell things in a different. How could you best take advantage of what that medium has offered to now tell the story? So there would be things I would do differently, you know, in telling it in film than you know, TV than, you know, I did in comics. there's also wonderful ways to translate something very similarly to how you did it in comics to film that can have a lot of charm. But then because it's this whole other medium with a whole other set of possibilities, I was really excited to do a lot of things differently as well to exploit that.
And for all the money and publicity Hollywood has brought to the convention, it doesn't change that comic books are no less a valid art form than they once were before all the hype started. The convention itself has become so big that the world has become aware of it as a forum, first and foremost. No matter if you have a comic, movie, game, or just want to tell people that they're all going to burn in hell for all eternity, if you can get your message to Comic-Con, you can get some eyeballs to look at what you want them to. However, comic books will always be at the core of all that happens there. They are the reason that all walks of life started showing up in the first place, and the stories and artwork inside, though relegated to the back of the limelight for now, and still taken for granted by most of society, are compelling and powerful enough to keep this cultural juggernaut rolling ahead for many years to come. Doesn't that sound like something worth picking up and reading every once in a while? If comics have changed so much for our world in the past 20+ years, one must wonder, what else can they do?